Okay, so today we're going to go over the fixed stars, which are known as the royal stars. There's a lot to cover. I just thought this picture was kind of significant because it's called the 10th kingdom, and we have the twin towers on the bottom and the castle on the top, and I'm going to get to the number 10 and how that relates to everything. And of course, the number 10 in Roman numerals is the X, right? So if you watch my last video, you'll understand the importance of the X. The X is really a symbol for this golden age coming, which is the great year. And here you have it in the Hindu naming of it and how they bring it down to the Yuga. And this is basically the same thing as the 4 seasons of the great year. Here we have two Bible quotes, which is explaining the great year. As for the likeliness of their faces, there are four had the face of a man, the face of a lion, and on the right side, and they had four of the face of an ox on the left, and four of the face of the eagle. It's Ezekiel 1:10. And the other quote is they are described later in the book of Revelations as the first beast like the lion, the second like the calf, and third like the face of the man, and the fourth like a flying eagle. So that is the great year. If you want to watch my last video, it's explaining everything about the great year. But this video, I'm going to discuss the four fixed stars, which are the royal stars, which are the four horsemen, which mark these 4 seasons of the great year. So the names of these four stars are Aldebaran, which is in the Taurus. It's also for the equinox, the vernal equinox, which is watchers of the east. We have Regulus as the summer solstice, watcher of the north, which is in Leo. Aldebaran is in Taurus. Entrées, which is in Scorpio, is the autumn equinox, watcher of the west. And Fomolo, which is the winter solstice, he's the watcher of the south. There's also four angels that are matching these stars. Aldebaran, which is in Taurus, is Michael. Gabriel is Fomolo, which is in Aquarius, well, at the bottom of Aquarius. Raphael is in Regulus, and Ariel is in Entrées, which is in Scorpio. And the Persians actually use these stars to predict the future. So they're predicting the great year. Also, they were considered fixed stars because they're on the path of the sun and they don't change. And they were used for navigation as well. So in my last video, I was talking about all the gates and the planets and the gates. And this shot here, you can see Aldebaran is right on the eye of Taurus, the bull, and Jupiter is right in the horns, and that is the silver gate. I have all these star maps mapped out on the 2024 winter solstice, which is the 21st of the 12th month in December. So you can see how everything is going to line up at that date. Here's just a shot of showing you the size of Aldebaran compared to our sun right now. Okay, so it was also used in The Lord of the Rings, and the star was known as Borgel. They also used it in Star Wars, so it's in some of our modern culture. In ancient culture, it was named as the follower because it follows the Pleiades and the Seven Sisters. Also known as the serpent, led the formation of the Mississippi River. It killed the serpent. And the Ben-Hur movie. Let's see what else here. The wheel of the ancient circle and the stones in the mountain of Wyoming join up to Aldebaran. So the ancients, were watching this star, all the fixed stars actually, the four of them. It also said that you could see it rising just before the sun in June to predict the June solstice. So it had importance. It was also the Buddha star, God's eye, the star of illumination. It started the Babylonian New Year, feminine form of Pan, and the heart of the bull. So I had to go check it out on Stellarium, and yeah, there it is. It's you see the bull there, and the sun is rising exactly on the June solstice. I don't know if you've ever checked this out. This is the Huffington Horse. It's in just outside of Oxford in England. It's quite huge, and it's been there for thousands of years. It's marking, we think, Taurus the bull, because I think the horns were longer at one time, and that would make sense. Or it's one of the four horsemen. That would also make sense too. But I think it's marking Aldebaran and the constellation Taurus, because this happens to be the flag at Oxford. And it's the bull with the river, the Milky Way, and then you have the harvest, of your souls, the harvesting of the souls, or the ascension tree. Which are you going to be? And the thing that's funny with Oxford, with all, it had secret societies in there, and it was also where Alice in Wonderland was created, just outside of Oxford. So that is funny because, we're always talking about Alice in Wonderland and going down these rabbit holes, and it relates to the Q movement a lot. And then we have Jupiter, the alchemic symbol of Jupiter is the 2024 Olympics. So Jupiter being right in Taurus is very important with the eye of the bull, Aldebaran. Little fun fact here, if you look ancient alphabet, you've got Q, looks like a 4, and R, which is 18, letter in the alphabet is 2. So then we reverse it, you've got your 24 alchemic symbol for Jupiter, which happens to be 17 and 18, which is a big part of the Q movement. And we know that Jupiter was called wormwood. It was the wood star in Chinese. And also, which is funny, this guy's doing gematria on it, and I noticed that the wormwood ends up being the number 9, which is the phi symbol again. I've done that in other videos, but it's funny how all these little dots are starting to connect. So checking in with the Bible, the Revelations 8:11 is the wormwood star, right? So that's Jupiter. But this guy had decoded it really cool. If you go 33 verses back, you get to the Great Earthquake, which is 6:12, and 13 verses forward, you get to 9:11, Apollyon. And then you also have the DNA in the middle at 46. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but I'm very curious about this 1333 number. It has relevance, huge relevance. And he's explaining it here, what these verses say. And it comes down to the 24 star number, where we get back to Jupiter being the number 24, the alchemic symbol. And this relates to the number 13 and 33 put together. So that's really cool. And it's all coded. Everything's coded in the Bible, and I'll show you how the math is all coding to it. Okay, so the next star is Antares, and you can see it here right in Scorpio. And we have Mercury above it on Ophiuchus's foot. And then we have the sun in the Golden Gate. If you watch my last video, that explains all this. The interesting thing about the Golden Gate is that you've got the eagle up on the left-hand side, but Scorpio used to be an eagle back in the ancient times. So here it is, one of the ancient tribes depicting it as an eagle. This guy was showing that it was an eagle, and Antares was the eye of the eagle, but now it's the heart of the scorpion. So all the symbolism with the double-headed eagles is because the two eagles were flanking the Golden Gate. And you can see here the number 33 is on top of one of these double-headed eagles. So this symbolism is through so many different nations, on their emblems and stuff. So it's all referring to the Golden Gate. And here's Trump's coat of arms. We see the lion on top, which I'm going to show you what the lion is. That's one of the other stars, which is Regulus. And also we have the double-headed eagles, right? So, yeah, and the sword. So, yeah, everything's there on his coat of arms for the great year. So here's some interesting facts. It's all about after the great disaster, the city of Ur, where Abraham was born, is said to have been the first city to be built after the great disaster, and was given the name of Earth itself, Urs. The city stood close to the site of later Babylon itself, not too far from modern-day Baghdad. Ariel, the archangel, that not mentioned in the sacred text, made available to the public, was the one that held the sacred knowledge of the great disasters. Basically, he knew about the great year, right? So it's all about the great year, because each time we get a disaster, it's when the great year comes. So, but war is not the only outlet for the symbolism of entrees. So basically, entrees represents the disaster of the great year, they're saying. It's also the fifth vertebrae in the lumbar. Okay, so it's the heart of Scorpio. It's called, like, it's rivaling Mars, so it's like Mars is a war planet. So it's kind of like a war with Mars. It's also Gaia sent him to sting the arrogant Orion. Also, it's a fishhook because the Scorpio tail looks like a magic fishhook used in Maui to pull up land from the ocean floors in the Hawaiian Islands. So has lots of myths about it. This is right off of Entrees and Scorpio. It's Ophiuchus cloud formations. But what's interesting in here, it has RNA in it. And I'm going to explain to you how all this great year relates to our DNA. But this RNA white substance that's in this section of the Milky Way is really quite fascinating. Next, we have Regulus, which is in Leo. And Leo, well, the other gate was up in here in Cancer, which was above Leo, which is Mars was in. I explained all that in my last video, the importance of that gate. But this is Regulus, and it's one of the fixed stars. Now here's the shape of the constellation. I just want you to get a good look at how it looks because it matches something. And if you can take a guess, that would be great. Here they're explaining it when you can see it, what time of the year. Regulus rises about an hour after sunset in early February. And then again in July, Regulus is low in the west an hour after sunset. But what I found interesting here is the Big Dipper. Which is Ursa Major. If you go one way, you get to Polaris, which I knew that, the North Star, but the other way of the kind of where the spout is, the pouring of the ladle, goes to Leo. So you can get to Regulus, which I just thought was a little fun fact. And here we can see the size of it in relation to the Sun and to Jupiter. Now, these fixed stars are pretty big. So Regulus is about 75 light years away. It's about 4 times as wide and 140 times as bright as our sun. By some impossible magic, Regulus were to replace our sun, Earth's atmosphere would be stripped away, and shortly thereafter the oceans would boil, not to mention the vastly increased bombardment of ultraviolet rays, X-rays, and gamma rays. Taking all the star's radiation into account, Regulus pumps out about 350 times as much energy as our sun. So wow, this thing is powerful. Regulus is from the diminutive form of the Latin rex and means little king. Astronomers know Regulus as Leonus, but in times past it is best being known simply as Rex, as well as kingly names in other languages. So it's the king, the little king, but it's also the king of the beast. And then here in Lionheart was named Richard the Lionheart was also used. So it has huge significance. This Regulus is the king. Okay, so he's the little king, the heart of the lion. He's also the yellow emperor and the mighty. He's also the great, okay? And he's known as the Maga. I can't make this stuff up. Okay, so also between August 22nd and 24th, there's a sun overlap, so you can't see him, but there's that 22 and 24 number again, and it's relating to the king. And he's Mr. Great, and he's Mr. Magna in India. So, you know, it's just funny. It's like everything has meaning, right? So we're coming to see that. So it's spelled Magha. So it's Magha, So anyhow, it's pretty funny. So here we have the Yellow Emperor because this is what Regulus is. First calculated by the Jesuit missionaries on the beats of the Chinese chronicles. So anyhow, the Jesuits were in there, also referring to Regulus and this Yellow Emperor. The Yellow Emperor it's in August because that's when Regulus is high in the sky, the Leo constellation. Earth phases the yellow dragon, so it's the golden dragon. It's also Exion, Yon, X and Y, which makes me very suspicious with our DNA again. X and Y, so it's the yellow god. And here's Regulus, and here's the spelling of Maga. It's the bountiful. So Maga, here we go, Maga. So the Yellow Emperor brought me to Dan Gun. And every time I see DNA, I'm thinking our DNA again. DAN, or our DNA. So it's Dan Gun, famous tribe of Dan. It's all about our DNA. Okay, so here's the Lord in Heaven, City of God. They created the acupuncture, so they had the ancient knowledge. So this relates to Regulus as well. Now here we have the king, ruler, Lugun. This is all in Chinese too, and he's big, the big Li, and he's also great. Okay, and it goes back to Ur again, the city of Ur. So yep, it's all those words are there. Yeah, because Regulus is the king, right? So here we have I watched this video all about the pyramids and how they're like marking the great year. And they're just using the cross there because we know the X relates to the great year, but they're just showing it on the pyramids. And I'm going to show you why. First of all, I want to show you how the pyramid relates to Nazca, which is over here in Brazil, and then it goes up into Canada. There's another spot there. I guess that's the North Pole. But it's all relating these ancient sites. They're all on these ley lines that mark from the pyramids. So that's really cool. And the Nazca were ancient sites that had drawings on the ground. They're depicting all different animals and stuff, but um, there's also some interesting stuff about this location. There's a guy on YouTube that's matching different sites around the world, lots of pentagons. So we have the normal pentagon, which is in Washington, these black lines, that bring you to Brazil. And then there's a pentagon exactly the same shape as one in Washington, cut out of the woods. And if you notice, that pink line brings you over to the Nazca line. So it's bringing you to the pyramids. So it's like, yeah, everything is like lining up, all these sacred sites. So yeah, and here's the pyramid, the pentagon that's cut out in Brazil. It's actually a missile base. Okay, but this is all ancient knowledge that the ancient, civilizations knew, and the people that run the world know about, and we're just like clued out sheeple because we have no clue what's going on, but they do. So that's why the pyramid, relates to this pentagon. Everything relates. All these shapes have like kind of ancient knowledge in them, and they also have kind of math in them that relates to frequency. Okay, so this is how the world is run. Not that we would know anything about it, but the ancient tribes did, and a lot of their ancient sites are proving that. This NASCAR site that I was telling you about actually has all these shapes and drawings. You've got the cubes and the circles, and it's all relating to phi. And yeah, so I think the ancients were actually smarter than us. Now, the cube has different meanings. It's one of the Platonic solids, but it's also ends up being a hexagram. It's because it's six-sided, and it turns into a hexagram. And there happens to be a hexagram on top of Saturn. So there's all like, people, oh, it's Saturn worshiping. Well, yeah, Saturn is part of this whole great year. So yeah, there's worshiping of Saturn because it's marking the great year. People also wear these cubes on their foreheads in some religions. So, you can look at this and go, it's all crazy stuff. But what is ancient knowledge handed down? And they have respect for the great year. So should we. It's in the Bible. Just need to pay attention. So here's an interesting picture that has the lion, which is Regulus, the king, but it's all the math of this picture, this ancient picture with the cross on the bottom, which is marking the great year, is all relating to the math of the wobble of the earth and the precession of the zodiac. So, everything's mathematically lining up, which is amazing. And remember I said, what does the Leo constellation look like? Maybe you guessed it. Yeah, it looks like the Sphinx. Okay, and the Sphinx is actually facing east. And when it faces east at a certain time of the year, it actually faces Regulus. Okay, and that's why you have, it looks like a lion and a man. So if you notice here, it's really faint, but it's showing you the east location. It's in Virgo. I have my east here. And Regulus is, exactly on the east-west line. So yeah, it does. And this is, I did this out of Cairo on the winter solstice. So right on the winter solstice, which I said was when the great year is going to come, is this star aligning to the winter solstice, same as Stonehenge does. And of course, Melania went there and took lots of pictures of herself all around the pyramids. But a lot of them was with the Sphinx, and she's wearing a hat, right? And this hat represents Saturn. The Pope was wearing his satin hat too. The reason that they wear the hat is because the rings on Saturn, but also the tipping of the hat is relating to Saturn because Saturn tips. Jupiter and Saturn are really significant, and I'll explain why with ancient, secret mystery school knowledge from Freemasons and stuff, how they use these two planets and why. But I want to finish up on the four fixed stars. So this is Fomolo, it's pronounced, okay? And it's right at the bottom of Aquarius. And you see Saturn is right on the water. This is on the winter solstice, 2024. And the Fomolo is the mouth of the fish. And that's what the water is pouring into, okay? So we have here the sun right in the Golden Gate. We see Mercury. And we have Venus in Capricorn. This is all perfect ancient wisdom, all lining up perfectly in the right spot. Okay, so here we have Fomolo B does exist. It's shrouded by debris. So anyhow, I'm just showing you here how the water is going right onto the fish. And for anybody who wants to doubt the importance of this, we have Job 38:37. Who can count the clouds by wisdom, or tip of the water jars of the heaven? Because that's Aquarius tipping. And also Mark 14:13. And he sent two of his disciples and said to them, go into the city, and the man will meet you who's carrying the pitcher of water. Follow him. Okay, so, the age of Aquarius and Saturn being right on the water and the fixed star being Fomolo, which is the fish, is super important. Okay, so here Fomolo was called the first frog. Okay, so it's pretty funny because we have the frog in the Q movement. But also here they're talking about the winter solstice in Persia 3000 BC, when near the winter solstice, the royal stars, one of the four guardians of heaven, They were watching the stars, you know. So yeah, it's interesting that they're talking about the winter solstice and that it was also called the frog. I'm sorry, I had to add this in. I just thought it was so funny because I'm like, how is everything like seems to be adding up to this great year and these four fixed stars? Here's just showing the constellation. It used to be called the fish's eye. It was the eye, but now it's called the mouth. But here's all the different names that it was called through history, but now they've come to Fomalo. Okay, so you can go through all this if you want, but I just wanted to show that. And it makes sense that it was called the fish eye because when they shine light on it to kind of see the rings of it, it brings this eye picture, which I'm starting to think, like I really think now, this is the all-seeing eye because, you know, this is part of the great year. It's in the age of Aquarius. Um, you know, it's relating into the Bible with the water coming from the jugs pouring on it. So I'm like, yeah, most likely. So guess what? They decided to call this Fomalo now. In modern day, they're calling it Dagon. Okay, so the Dagon was a fish god. He was a merman. We're getting back to Atlantis now. It's pretty funny. We're going full circle. And, you know, Dagon, Dagnu, it's back to DNA again. It's the freaking DNA. It's always in everything. I'm like, ah, but it's always to do with fish and mermaids. So I'm kind of like, oh my God, this is crazy. And then we got the Pope with his fish, you know, with the Dagon. It's just hilarious. I can't stop laughing. It's just I shouldn't laugh. I'm being disrespectful, but it's pretty funny. Like, how can you not laugh? You know, it's like okay. So all this knowledge goes back to Thoth and the Emerald Tablets, and then we have the skull worshipping in the Catholic Church, and their symbol represents Thoth. Okay, so they know this knowledge, but they just never shared it with the masses. So that's what kind of irks me, you know. It's like, you know, they're able to use energies and vortexes and numbers and shapes and figure out how to heal things and, you know, create things and, you know, we're all here trying to, you know, work our butts off. So here's a thing from the Emerald Tablets: turn the thoughts inward, not outward. Find the light, soul within. Know that thou art the master. All else brought from within. Grow thou into realms of brightness. Lord thou the thought on the light. Know thou art one with the cosmos, a flame and a child of the light. And this is the Emerald Tablets. This is Thoth. Okay, so Fomalo, or if you want to call it Dagon, is the third brightest star. Let's see what else. It's the mouth of the fish and also the mouth of the whale. So we're getting back to the, you know, the sea again and the whale. I just wanted to show you that, how that's all in here. And it also has all the specs kind of, you know, everything about it. Okay, so we talked about the winter solstice, but here it has characteristics of the horses reflected in the famed four horsemen of the apocalypse. Revelation 6, the chariot horses of the book of Zechariah. Regulus was long considered the supreme of the four guardians, but the role of Fomalo, Gabriel, is the birth of Jesus, must now be said to challenge or actually supplant with a new stage to the human spiritual evolution, the supremacy of the more medical archangel of the Leonine era. So sorry for my reading there, but basically they're saying, you know, the fish is now kind of or taking over from the lion, which is kind of crazy. So here we have some lyrics about Dagon. This is deliverance burns in the veins, foretold are set apart, marked by ascension in the flames. Because it's all about ascending, this flame, this fire has to, you know, go up your spine. And I've spoken about that before in my other videos, but it's interesting to find lyrics. And these are lyrics singing about Dagon. Okay, so painted and inscribed in the flat stones, let's see, the symbol to guard against Dagon, created by the elder things, long ages past, to guard against Dagon and his spawn. It's like who's the good guy, who's the bad guy? I don't know, but I know it's all referring to the great year, and something's going to happen, and we need to know what to do. So this is all the different modern day culture where Dagon is represented, and many different shows and stuff. You want to go through that and kind of see, but it's all to do with Fomolo, this all-seeing eye star, and it's super significant. And one of the main reasons why I feel that this whole event is so significant because of our DNA, I actually think that if you don't ascend, somehow your DNA gets harvested. I don't like the word harvest. I don't like the word worship because it reminds me of worship. So, yeah, I know it sounds crazy, but I think our DNA is super important. And I think that's the whole purpose of the harvest. Okay, and it has some value, whether it's intergalactical or what. I don't, really know, but I know that our DNA has a huge value. So basically, the harvest is for that. In my personal opinion, you can, see it through some of the movies like Jupiter Ascending, also the show called 100. They're all talking about this. So is it all science fiction? Who knows? But I just get suspicious because they have to tell us. It's like kind of like cosmic law. So I think they tell us through fiction and then make us think it's all fiction. But once you understand the Secret Mystery School stuff, you start to see it. It's in all the movies, like it's everywhere. It's on all the music videos. So you're like, okay, like they're using it so much in our faces. But if you don't know what it is, you can't see it. So it's important to just learn this knowledge so you can understand the messaging that they're sending us. And here we have the Eye of Sauron, which is in the Lord of the Rings. Okay, because it does have a ring around it, the eye. And if you Google it, then you get this creepy dude with his got the mouth, right? So it's like the fish or the sea creature with the mouth, because the star is in the mouth. So they're referring to that star. It's like obviously, it's just in our face. But if you don't know your history and you don't know how to read the sky and you don't, end up reading about all these stars, you wouldn't know. So here's the next thing. It relates to white cockatoos. I know somebody else had done some digging on that. The mounds at the state park in Indiana also line with the rising of Fomolo. So yeah, and also in Saskatchewan, USA, in Canada, Saskatchewan, and Wyoming, USA, they're aligning to the star. So it definitely has a super importance and in regards to the great year. So this guy has taken a lot of time to figure out all the different constellations in the Bible and how they all map out on a grid, which kind of blew my mind. There's 49 constellations, and he's got them all mapping out to verses here. I'm just like, whoa, that's a lot of work. And he's called it the T-Cross constellation grid if you want to find him. And what was interesting is one of his grids here was showing these constellations. They're all on the Earth one in the center, and the T-Cross is relating to Christ, and then right across above that is the lion, the king, right? And then we've got, Scorpio, we've got the Waterman, Aquarius, the Ram, and the Lion. So, he's figured out how these all relate into the Bible. You can, and anybody that's a real Bible scholar that's interested in all this, I think this is fascinating. So, when they say don't look at the heavens, I don't think it's necessarily true. It's in the Bible if you want to see it. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was the star Sirius. And this is the winter triangle. It takes one star out of Orion. The other one is Procyon and Sirius, which is the dog star. And I started looking around inside this triangle because I always go, okay, if there's a triangle, what's in it? And it was really cool what I found. and I'll explain that to you. But here we have, what Sirius means. It's a flaming star. It's the dog days of summer because it always droughted out the River Nile. And it also refers to the winter solstice in like Hawaii, in the southern equinoxes, it's winter solstice. So, yeah, we have etymology. Sirius comes from the Latin Sirius, which means glowing, scorching. Um, Sanskrit is the deer hunter. It's also associated with beryl, which is actually um, crystal, and that I found interesting. Anytime there's crystals, because everything's about the crystal. Okay, that's what Atlantis was all about, the crystal. The doggone people now believe that the Sirius star had contact with intelligent extraterrestrials. Okay, so these are ancient tribes, the gods from the sky. They had contact with them, but they believed it came from Sirius. And the thing is, with Sirius, people have been looking into the orbital rotation of it, and I'll get to that next. Hang on, I just want to go through this. This is the crystal. Okay, and I just find it fascinating because they turn into formations, right? That's the way they map them out here, the structure of them. And, it's the six-pointed star. Well, it's the hexagon. And everything relating to crystals, it's all about the crystals. And I think even the pyramids was about the crystals. Okay, so now if you take this, they're showing the hexagon in the sky. They take the triangle, and now they also have the winter hexagon. So they have Orion in there. They have the Silver Gate with Taurus and Aldebaran. They've got the twins, the twin towers, which represents the twins. So that's all cool. Then, here we have Orion. Orion was the giant. He was also the hunter. He's also part with Shiva. Shiva we have on CERN, and it's the the destroyer, and yeah. So, and it's also, there's a sickle, and here I just took it in when I went on Stellarium and drew out the triangle, but this NGC is what I found, and it's quite a surprise. It's on the horse's mouth. Okay, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. That's about it. There's all these sayings come from something. It's because they all had significance to the sky. So this is what I found. I can't believe it. It's a Rosetta Nebula. Now, if you understand the Rosicrucians and the importance of the rose in the Rosicrucian movement, you would understand why I was so blown away when I found this. Here it's saying it's NGC 2244, but it's also known as 2238. Now, if you take 8 and 3, which adds up to 11, and you take 22, it brings it to 33. And look what I found. I couldn't believe it. We have the rose inside the triangle in one of the Freemason, it's a Rosicrucian lodge with the black and white. Okay, because we're in a duality system, and it has a lot to do with the torus, red shift, blue shift, the hyperbola. Torus field is what the black and white's all about. It's also the red and the blue. Okay, so it's all to do with this field that we're in. And then also, when you go into Orion and you start looking around inside Orion constellation, there happens to be NGC 2024, which is the year that I said, this is all going to go down, the end of the great year. And you won't believe what that really is. It's called the Flame Nebula. Well, NGC 2024 happens to be the hand of God. Okay, so that's the Flame Nebula. No kidding ya. Okay, you just can't make this stuff up. Okay, I wish I could, but it's right there. And we also have the Black Horse Nebula right beside the Hand of God Nebula. You know, then of course it's red behind it, which is the black horse and the cherry tree. You know, so this is where all this stuff comes from. It's all mythos, legends. You know. Okay, so I also found this with the hand of God. We've got Jupiter and Saturn symbols, alchemic symbols, and then we got the man and the woman. We also have Leo, and we also have the double-headed eagle, which is, you know, flanking the Golden Gate. And we have, yeah, so it's all there, you know. So sorry, guys, I can decode your ancient mystery school stuff. And so here we have Sirius's orbit, what some people are saying that it's doing, and it doesn't surprise me. I've listened to a couple different people on YouTube talking about it, and the ancient philosophers in the Renaissance time, which was, you know, the age of enlightenment when people actually talked about this stuff openly. All the philosophers were talking about how Sirius was once blue, now it's red, or vice versa, and it's changing color as the orbit goes away. It's basically, they're saying it's the binary to Earth, okay, the Sirius star. So if it's the binary to Earth, it's going to be pulling and changing things, and it's also going to kind of speed up the orbits as it gets closer. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, you know, that this is kind of being hidden from us if that's the case. You can read through these articles here if you want. I'm not going to bore you with my reading, but nothing surprises me anymore. You know, everything's kept so hidden because they don't want us to know about the great year, because if they did, people would obviously panic. If a lot of people did, and, you know, people would be like, oh, I'm not going to work anymore. You know, it would be chaos, right, if everybody knew. So they only want certain, you know, the few knowing, people that can figure it out. Okay, so here's an interesting thing with the Big Dipper. You know, I told you it goes to Regulus, but it also goes to Deneb, and it also goes to Polaris. You know, so this is really significant, this constellation, how it points out so many other stars. So when you see the Big Dipper in the sky, you can figure out where a lot of other things are placed and for navigation. You know, and it ends up looking like the swastika, right, when it turns. And so, you know, here we have it, you know, Navy SEAL barracks, and it looks like a swastika. So, you know, a lot of this stuff is just stuff from the sky, and, you know, you can see it as satanic and crazy and evil. It's really where your kind of your frequency's at. If you're in fear, you're going to see everything as, you know, terrible. But just once you have knowledge, you realize it's just being, you know, they've taken it over. So here we have Baron, and here we have him at the school. I think it's in Scotland or England somewhere, with the king, Regulus. And the reason I put this in here is because I was quite fascinated with his birthday. I did a little search on his birthday and where it lines up in Stellarium. And here we have Regulus is the number 11. Now 11 has to do with 11 dimensions, okay? So if you understand dimensions, you're going to understand that it also, you know, has great importance, number 11. But up here, it's the mermaid again, and the crystal is aqua aura. So always going back to the fish, right? The fish, the fish. So I checked out Baron Trump's birthday, and oh my God, here he is, right on. It's called Citus. It's this big sea monster. He's right on the edge of the tail, next to Pisces, like he's between Pisces. You'd say he's in Pisces, but the sun was exactly at the tail of this big whale. okay, which I was kind of like, I was like, no way. And then I was listening to, I've listened to Dark Journalist and all about the hot zone,